You've built a successful life, but now what? Welcome to the Gen X Collective podcast. We're for men who are navigating midlife with purpose, health, wealth, family, work, and the mark you've made on the world. We're talking about the stuff that really matters with experts who have solutions, advice, and a sense of humor. And now, here's our host, Laurent Truc.
All right, well, I'm here today with my friend Terry Gogna, and I'm super excited to have you on. We've been talking offline for, can't say a long time, because we met pretty recently through a common friend. But you have this amazing background. You've talked to so many people. You've presented to so many people. I'm pumped just having a frank conversation and learning, getting as much out of that head of yours that I possibly can to learn more.
No, I'm looking forward to it as well. It's going to be a blast.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you jumping on and taking the time. So can we start maybe just for the listeners, a little bit about your background? Who are
Sure.
you? What do you do? Why are you here?
Okay, perfect. You know what? Let me just go a little bit back and tell you how my career started as a professional speaker and an author. Okay? Back in about, say, 2006, 2007, I was actually a caregiver for my father who had a terminal brain disease. I was there 24 hours a day, looking after him in our house with my mom. And every year after year after year, he was getting trapped in his body. And I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't go get a job. I couldn't go build my business. I had to be there for my dad all the time, 24 hours a day, round the clock.
Well, how old were you?
This was about in my 40s.
In your 40s. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm there now, and I'm witnessing everything that's happening with my dad, and I know he's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know he's going to die, and literally, his life was so bad in the last year because he got trapped in his body. He had a brain disease called progressive supranuclear palsy. And so literally, he had everything inside. He knew who he was, but he couldn't talk. He couldn't eat. He couldn't even communicate. The only thing he could do was a yes or a no.
Wow.
That was it. And he went from being a successful business person and somebody who's proud and strong, a father of 6 kids, and to somebody who just literally got imprisoned in his own body. And while that was happening, I knew he was going to die. I was sitting there thinking, man, what am I going to do when he finally dies? You know, what am I going to do afterwards? But I didn't know when that was going to happen. So, but before he actually died, I was thinking to myself, what are my options? Am I going to get a job? Am I going to continue a particular business? Mm-hmm. And then I had this crazy thought in my head, and it said, why don't you write a book? And I'm like, where'd that come from? But the thought, it was like, write a book about everything that's happened in your life, not about teaching people anything, but just the things that have happened to you in your life, the stories that nobody else has, they're your stories. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to just wing it. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And you know when you have an idea and you think it's a brilliant idea, and then the next day you wake up out of bed and you hear, what a stupid idea you had yesterday. And you think, why is this idea now not so good? Yet I haven't done anything. It's just been like, I just went to sleep.
That's me every day.
Yeah. The next day I woke up, all I heard was, keep writing the book. I'll take care of the rest. I'm like, what? I didn't hear anything else. I'm thinking, where's all the negative voices that are supposed to tell you, don't do it? You're being crazy. You just got excited for the moment. But in my head, I kept hearing, don't worry about it. You write the book. I'll take care of the rest. Well, in 4 months, I mean, I was spending like 8 to 10 hours a day whenever I could in between helping my dad writing this book. And then eventually it was done, right? And I thought, okay, how am I going to market this? So I thought, if I don't get the price of this book down small enough, I'm never going to make any money. Mm-hmm. I didn't even have enough money. So I actually borrowed $12,000 from my mom. I ordered 3,000 books and had them shipped on a skid in my garage. And when they arrived, my kids were like, Dad, how many books you got there? I said, 3,000. How many you sold? None. I hadn't sold any yet. It was just something in my head telling me I'm doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And the name of the book was, How Can I Get Myself to Do What I Need to Do? Because that was my whole life. I knew what I needed to do, but I couldn't get myself to do it. All for so many years, I didn't know how I could get myself to do what I need to do. And that's why I knew I had to write the book, because I finally figured out how I could get myself to do these things. So then what happened was I said, okay, got the books. Now I'm going to start giving them out. So I started giving them out to business leaders. It's costing me money to ship them all out. They're going all over the place. 6 months later, I haven't sold one book. Not one. But that voice is still there.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, I get a phone call on my voicemail, and it said this. It says, "Hi, Terry. My name is Charlie Tremendous Jones. Somebody tells me that you have a book that I need to read. Please give me a call so I can help you sell another million." I'm thinking like, $1 million?
Sell another million.
I haven't even sold one. And I thought, I never even heard of this guy. I looked him up and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is exciting, because I knew this guy was a motivational speaker. He was an author. He owned a publishing company. I'm like, wow. So then I phoned him up. We talked and I said, Charlie, nice to meet you. Thanks for your great message. He goes, yeah, send me the book. He says, I gotta read it, and I got a few people who want to read it. So then he did that. 3 weeks later, he comes back and he goes, okay, Terry, we need to talk. He goes, I want to buy 20,000 books. I mean, I almost fell off my chair.
That's incredible.
He goes, I want to buy 20,000 books. And I said, well, Charlie, I ain't done this before. What do I do? I'm thinking, am I supposed to discuss this with this guy? I'm supposed to be like a know-it-all. But he says, I says, give me some advice. You've done this before. What do I do here? It's my first book. And he says to me, I never forget these words. He goes, Terry, I don't give advice. I said, what? He says, I don't give advice. He goes, I only give counsel. And he says, I'm going to give you the choices that you have. Then you pick which choice that you'd prefer to go with. I thought, okay. Then he goes, then you can't blame me. so then, I heard his choices, and I said, okay, I'll take that one. And he goes, okay, done. 20,000 books sold. He sends me the money. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Wow.
That was my first order, but I had no idea what he was going to do with it. Those 20,000 books, they went out. And all of a sudden, the phone calls started coming. We read your book. We want to use it as a book of the month in our organization. Can you fly over and speak for us? We'll pay everything. Your flight, your speaking, your this, your that. And I'm like, what has happened here?
And at the time, public speaking wasn't even on your radar.
I wasn't even a public speaker. I just wrote the book, right? I wasn't even a speaker. But then they started asking me, we want you to speak on the stuff that you wrote in the book.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my God, what's just happened? And the doors opened. And from there to today, I've spoken personally in audiences of over 300,000 people in 11 countries, including China, right?
Wow.
That was a crazy trip myself when I went to China to speak, because they had my book too. They translated it into Chinese, right? So behind me is actually a Chinese translation version right there. What? That one right there is in Chinese.
That's so cool.
And I couldn't even believe it. So then my career just took off like a rocket.
Yeah.
And that was how I started.
That's a great little voice you have in your head.
Oh, wow. So then that was the first book, sold over 100,000 copies in 6 languages. Then I wrote my second book called Get the Power to Change Your Life. And now I just released my third book, which is just there, 10 Pillars to Finding Your Purpose. And these books, they're not teaching books. They're my life. These are the things that, man, I struggled with so much in my life. So many things that I couldn't overcome, that I had to discover, try to figure out, how do I get through this problem in my life? And because what I realized was I had to, when I was running into a problem in my life, I was reading so many of these books. And as I read these books, I don't know where it came from, but this little voice came in my head. And I'm like, where's that guy? Where'd he come from? Because the more books I read, the louder this voice got. Mm-hmm. And he started telling me, Terry, you're an idiot. Why are you behaving like this? I can see what you're doing. And I'm like, what? Right? So then as I'm living my life, the more books I was reading, this little voice kept saying to me, you're doing this wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. You know better than that. Remember that book you read just a month ago? It said that you should have a better attitude. I'm thinking like, why is this guy talking to me? And literally it was me analyzing how I was behaving in every situation in my life.
Interesting.
And then I thought, okay, I'm going to start writing all these things that were happening to me in these books. And so that's where these books came from. And when I go to speak, I'm not there to try to impress people with my content. I'm not there to try to impress people. Look, I'm such a great motivational speaker. I tell people, look, man, I'm just going to tell you about the mistakes I made in my life. Maybe you can relate. And it really worked because people come to me and they're like, man, have you been in my office? Have you been in my house? Do you have a camera? Because everything that you're talking about, I'm doing it. That's the same stuff that's happening.
Sure.
So that's where my career came from. And as I started speaking, I started getting vulnerable. My kids were actually saying to me, Dad, you really want to put that in the book? I said, what do you mean? They go, you're talking about the way you raised your kids. You're talking about the mess you made. You're talking about your marriage problems. You're talking about everything that you might want to hide. I said, look, I don't care. I got nothing to hide. I'm just going to, this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about stuff that I screwed up with in my life.
That's great. And that's so real. I mean, we're now talking to an audience of Gen Xers, men that are 45 to 60. And we typically don't share, especially our faults and our problems and things we haven't been successful at doing in the past. And it's refreshing when you read it or hear it from somebody else, because you do, obviously, it's like, oh, yeah, happened to me. It resonates tremendously. I don't have the courage to say out loud like you do, but happens to me.
Yeah. And you know what you just said there about the Gen X, a bunch of men getting together? I remember why the stuff that I talk about has ended up being so important. And there's a movie, I can't even remember the name now. It's just 4 or 5 guys who are best friends. It was a TV series. I think it's called Million Little Things or something like that. But these 4 or 5 guys, they knew each other for years. They went to every football game. Every Christmas, every New Year's, they were always together. They're best friends. They loved each other. And then all of a sudden, one of them commits suicide. And the others are looking at each other like, what the hell just happened here? How comes we didn't know that this guy was going through these issues? And that's where it blew my mind, is in we have these fake relationships with our friends where we only talk about the good times. We only share fantastic times, but we never talk about life. We never talk about things that are bothering us because nobody wants to be vulnerable, because we don't trust each other with that information. Yeah. And the stuff I talk about, I'll be honest with you, who cares? I'm going straight there. I'm talking about stuff that's so important because I realized how important that is. So after watching that, I actually went to a restaurant with about 4 or 5 of my friends. After I watched what happened in this TV series, we all sat down in a restaurant. We're all sitting there. And all of a sudden I told them about this series. I said, we're a bunch of guys. I said, we're always together. I said, so you know what? How about we just share some stuff that what's going on in our lives? And all of a sudden, one of the guys sitting in the restaurant, he goes, I'll go first. I'm
really?
Like, he just volunteered. And we all looked at him and he goes, you know what? He says, I feel pretty lonely in my house. Every time I go home, I just feel lonely. And we were like, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying this. And then another guy's talking and he's like, my career has gone down the drain. I feel so much pressure. And I sat there and I'm listening to these guys and I thought, we've been doing this for years and nobody wanted to go there. They didn't trust each other enough to say, I just want to tell you how I'm feeling. I just need a group where I can share without feeling that I got nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
Because I was brought up like that in my family. I come from a culture that has an unspoken culture, which says, if you're going through shit in your life, don't tell anybody.
Mhm.
Don't tell your wife, don't tell your best friend, don't tell your kids. You don't tell nobody. You be a man and you just keep it inside and handle it yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happens when you can't handle it?
Mhm.
What do you do then? And so that's why I like to go to places where it's a little bit, I'm sharing stuff that other people won't share, that it's okay to share because I know where you are.
That's great. There's not a lot of avenues for men to do that. I mean, that's why there's such a massive suicide rate in men. That's why there's such a massive depression rate in men, because we don't share, we don't talk. I was brought up the same way around the same era. It was suck it up and what will the neighbors think, and keep it to yourself. And yeah, it's important to have avenues, and it's not easy to trust, because we also grew up in the era where bullying was pretty rampant. And so if anybody knew anything about you, they took advantage of that, and they used it against you. So kudos to you for opening that door for your group of men, and for men in general, when you speak and talk about vulnerability.
Totally. And I remember I went to Dominican Republic and I was speaking. There was like, I don't know, 5,000 people in the audience. And at the end of it, I was signing some books, and this girl comes up to me. She's like, she's 16 years old, and she didn't get me to sign a book or anything. She had a folded up letter, and she just handed it to me, and she goes, thank you. And she just gives it to me. And I was busy. I just put it in my jacket pocket, and then I forgot about it. And then at the airport, I took it out and I was reading it, and I couldn't believe it. She's writing in there that she goes, I have a bad relationship with my parents. She goes, I live with my grandma. My brother committed suicide. I suffer from depression. I don't know what I want to do with my life. And after I heard you speak, now I know what I want to do with my life. Thank you so much. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I started crying after reading this letter. It was so impactful that I literally copied the letter and I put it on the back cover of my book.
Wow, that's awesome.
And that's what I knew. Oh man, people are relating to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody wants to talk about it. They don't want to go there because they think people don't want to hear stuff that I'm going through in my life. I mean, nobody wants to hear the stuff you're going through if you haven't solved it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
Right? But
it's like, don't add more problems on my life.
Right. But the thing is, if you've gone through it and now you've overcome it, okay, tell us that you went through it as well. What did you do? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, now you can add some meaning to somebody else's life because you made it through.
And so you must be running into men all the time that share after one of your conversations or speeches and open up. Do you provide, back to your comment before around, I don't give advice. What was the term you said that the guy said to you?
He said to me, he goes, I don't give advice. I just give counsel.
I give counsel. So do they look at you as a counselor, like somebody to provide them assistance, or in part of what you do you tell them, like, here's how you get the guidance you need? Like, what's the next step after kind of that first step?
I'll give you an example. Like for this particular weekend, I went to speak in Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. Okay. And one of the speeches that I was talking about was how my dad died, how he went through his sickness. And while he was going through this, what was happening to me? Because I was fairly spiritual, but when I saw my dad going through what he was going through, I was pretty pissed at God. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was sitting there, I was praying, and I was literally saying to God, how can you do this to my dad? This makes no sense. There are bad people out there who, they just have a heart attack and they die and they don't suffer. And here, my dad's been a great guy and you're making him suffer. Like, why are you doing this? And for how many years are you going to do this to him? Mm-hmm. And so at that particular meeting, I told them the things that happened to me, the entire process of the anger I had and the answers that I got that absolutely empowered me, why my father was suffering, the conclusion I came to, how I resolved it. And at the end, when I left that place and I was outside, I had men come to me in tears. Really? I mean, literally shaking my hand, tears coming down their face. And they go, my dad's going through exactly what you talked about. And I know what to do now. I didn't have to counsel. I just told them my story from the beginning to the end because I don't have the answers. I'm just telling you what I did.
And then they absorb it, they take it in, and they address what they're
Totally.
going through the way they
Yeah.
need to get through it. Everybody, I'm
100
sure, approaches it differently.
100%. They just need to know, like, okay, this guy was in my shoes and this is what he did. That's all. I don't need to give them advice. I don't even need to give them counsel. I'm just telling you what I did, man. You know what? That worked for me. And I fought for it. Like I didn't know what to do, but I ended up figuring out how I could handle the situation. Doesn't mean you're going to handle it the same way. But I just wanted to give you what I did. And maybe that'll help you.
So Terry, when we talked about doing this podcast, we talked about fathers, leading the family. How do you maintain kind of that father figurehead? And now you brought up a topic that's totally different, but I'm captivated by this story, and so we may have to do the other one later. But is it appropriate for us to kind of cover what you went through with these individuals? Because I'd love to hear the story and, unfortunately, the hardship you went through. Because we all have aging parents. Well, not all. Sadly, we don't all, but many have aging parents. I'm lucky that my parents are 19 years older than me, so they're still not that old.
Right.
But they are getting older. And I know a lot of my friends whose parents have passed away or are going through the exact situation you talked to. So I think we're on this topic. Can we dive in?
Of
I
course.
think it'd be great.
Well, let me explain what happened. So, first of all, let me tell you how my dad became my hero. Okay? When I was 14 years old, my dad had all these businesses. Now, he came from India and he moved to England. So in England, he's got all these businesses. And at the age of 14, my dad's got 6 kids. So I'm the second youngest. There's one younger than me, but everybody else is older. So at 14, he says to me, he says, look, I'm going to go to a wholesaler's to buy some stuff for my store. You want to come? I said, sure, I'll come. I wanted to go there to watch him. So he goes in there. He makes a deal with the guy that he's going to buy all these things. And next minute, the guy asks him for like 2,000 pounds worth of stuff or whatever. And he goes, okay, he pulls out his checkbook and he hands him the check, the empty checkbook. And he goes, okay, just go ahead and fill it out. So the guy, I'm watching this, the guy's writing it all out, gives it to my dad. My dad looks at it, signs the bottom and gives him the check back. We get in the car and I said to my dad, I said, why'd you give him the blank checkbook? Why didn't you fill it out yourself? And he looks at me and he says, because I can't read or write English. I said, what? Are you kidding me? We're in England and you have all these businesses and all these houses and you can't read or write English. I'm like, he fooled everybody. Nobody knew he couldn't read or write English, especially me. I'm thinking I live in the same house. And that's the day I realized my dad made no excuses. He just did whatever he had to do to get the job done for his family. And if he had to fake the fact that he, that he couldn't even read or write English, I said, so what were you doing when you were looking at the check? He goes, I see the numbers.
It's universal.
That's what I understand. I knew he wasn't faking it when I saw the numbers. So that day, my dad became like, okay, you know what? This is pretty cool. He knows his stuff. Then, fast forward it to, he's now 72 years old. He's taken my kid and one of my brother's kids to school. He's a grandfather. He's taken them to school. He's 72 years old, and all of a sudden something happens to him in the playground. He falls. And then he eventually gets home, and he's got blood coming down his head. And I'm looking at him like, what happened? And he says to me, I have no idea. He goes, I just woke up and I was on the floor. And so then I took him to the doctors, checkup after checkup after checkup, finally neurologist. And then finally, after a few months, the guy comes back, the neurologist, he goes, we figured out what's wrong with your dad. I said, what? He says, he's got this disease called progressive supranuclear palsy. It's called PSP. He goes, 1 in a million people get this disease and your dad's got it.
Wow.
I'm like, holy cow. And then he tells me what's going to happen. And boy, he goes, nobody's lived beyond 10 years. And so my dad's 72, he's strong as anything. And so here's what happened. I'm watching my dad. The first thing that started happening was all of a sudden he'd just fall backwards. He'd be standing straight and fall backwards. So that's the first thing that happened to him. Second, he started losing his balance. And so all of a sudden he's becoming imbalanced and he's trying to grab stuff. The next thing is I realized, okay, he can't walk on his own. So what I would do is I would get him to sit in the sofa and I would walk up to him and I'd get him to put his hands on my shoulder. And then I'd get him to stand up while he's got me to balance on. And then I would walk backwards so that he could get the exercise. And I would go round and round and round in the living room so he could walk, but he's leaning on me. And then he'd sit down and then I'd watch him again 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later. And I'm watching every little behavior. I'm looking at his eyes and I realize he can't move his eyes.
Really?
His eyes are solid and he has to move his head. That's how he can. And then I know, why are you moving your head instead of your eyes? Because his eyeballs froze with this disease. So the next thing that happened is all of a sudden his neck froze and now he's moving his body to the left and the right. And I'm thinking like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Like he's literally, everything becomes stiff and he's stuck in his body. And then he loses the dexterity in his fingers. He could no longer pick up a spoon and hold it.
Wow.
And then he started slurring his words. I couldn't understand what he was saying. And then he started to have problems with swallowing. He was choking on water. Mm-hmm. And then he got to a point where I thought, this is getting crazy. Like, what is going on here? He couldn't feed himself. And I'm watching all this and he's getting stuck in his body and I'm getting pissed. And every time I go to pray, I'm praying to God saying, what are you doing to my dad? This is not right. I'm seeing him year after year after year go through this. And I'm praying, I says, why are you doing this to my dad? This is not right. It's been 6 years, 7 years. I want my dad to die. Please take him. And I would hear nothing. And then I find myself, I'm helping my mom feed my dad. I'm literally feeding him. I'm cleaning his nose. I'm shaving him. I'm brushing his teeth. I'm taking him to the toilet. Man, it's like, this is my proud dad. I'm taking him for a shower and taking him to the toilet and cleaning him. And it was not good. I could see my dad was just like, he was just, I just want to die, And then he got to the point where he was completely trapped in his body. And I saw visitors come into the house. And my dad was like the life of the party, man. He loved meeting people. And he couldn't say a word. And I looked at my dad and he shook their hand and a tear was coming down his face. And I'm looking at him. And I'm thinking to myself, this is bad, man. And then I sat there and I prayed again. And this time I just let God have it all, man. It was like, I said, this is not right. I want you to take him. And then I heard this voice in my head and it said this. It said, your dad is suffering for you. I'm like, what? He says, you need to serve your dad. When you've served him, I'll take him. I kept hearing this. I'm like, what do you mean? Serve him, take, like, I don't get this. Like, why? And man, it was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. When you become a better son, I will take your father.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even get this. I realized my mom and dad had 6 kids. 5 of them were perfect. 1 was an idiot. I fought with my dad all the time. All the time. Every time he'd open his mouth, I'd disagree with him. And bang, we'd be fighting and arguing all my life. And now I'm stuck with my dad. I'm the guy who's looking after him 24 hours a day. I don't even like my dad. And I'm hearing this voice, you need to serve your dad. I ain't taking him till you become a better son. And I'm like, I don't believe this. So then I wrote these little cards. This was like 2009. I still have the cards. And on these cards, I wrote stuff on there like, I never get angry at my dad. I never lose my temper. I always respect him. I never get irritated. I never lose my patience. I always lost my patience. I had to write this because when I feed my dad with a spoon, I'm holding the spoon, I'd put it in his mouth, and then the disease would make his brain close his mouth so tight on the spoon. I couldn't get the spoon out.
Wow.
And I'm like, I would get angry at him because I'm a caregiver, man. I'm 24 hours a day. I'm getting tired. And I'm like,
Sure.
let it go, let it go. And I'm like, why the hell are you getting mad at your dad, man?
Mhm.
So I had to write these things down that I was screwing up with so that every day before I went to see my dad, I would read this. I never disrespect my dad. I never lose my patience. I'm always there for him. And I'm thinking, I'm writing everything that I was doing wrong. I was reversing it to make sure I did the right things. And then on the second card, I wrote there, today, you don't know, it could be his last day. This is the last time he ever hugs you. This is the last
Wow.
time he can ever say a word. This is the last time he can even put his thumb up. And then there's going to be the last time you see him smile. Then you're going to go and there's going to be an empty bed and it's over. And the only thing that you're going to remember is how you treated him. I'm like, I read these cards every single day to make sure that I lived up to this voice that I kept hearing. You better treat him right. You better be a better son, because until you do it, I ain't taking your dad. And I'm like, so that means the suffering that my dad was going through, the amount of suffering was in my hands. Man, I'm thinking, I better do this quick because I don't want him to suffer. I'm reading this every day. And eventually I realized, okay, I'm getting tired, but it's, I'm doing it for my dad.
Mhm.
And then I started changing my prayer. I wasn't getting angry anymore. I changed my prayer and I said to God, God, I know my dad's going to die soon, but I want to ask you a favor. Can you do these two things? I got two requests. I said, when my dad finally dies, I want to be the one who finds him, not my wife or my kids or my mom. I said, I don't want that trauma for them. I want to be able to find him. And secondly, when my dad dies, I want him to die peacefully, because nobody with this disease dies peacefully. They bloody
Really?
choke, man. They choke. And I'm like, please let him die peacefully.
Mm.
And then on this one day, I come down at 4:00 in the morning, because this was like a 24-hour job. Come down at 4:00 in the morning because he's on a feeding tube in the house now. So I'm changing dad. I had to turn him over because he couldn't even turn over. So at 4:00, I'm turning him over, and then I look at his mouth, and his mouth is all dry. And I noticed, okay, you know what? I need to get a sponge under some water. There's like a little stick with a sponge. I dipped it in water, and then I would put it in his mouth. He didn't have any teeth. And when I put it in his mouth, he did this. He went, and as soon as he did that, I looked at him and I said, you look so cute. I'm like, I couldn't believe I said this to my dad, and that he looked so cute. And right there, I thought to myself, this is the same guy who used to whop my ass, and I would call him cute. What the hell happened? You know what? I fell in love with my dad.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible.
He never said one bad thing to me for 2 years because he couldn't talk. I'm like, I felt so much love for him because I became his dad virtually.
Yeah.
And then I left and I went upstairs to bed. And again, 3 hours later, I would come down to do the same thing, walked in the room to try to change him, looked down at his face, and he had gone.
Oh, wow.
But when I looked at his face, I couldn't believe it. He was like this. He had his head on his two hands like this. And I realized I found him and he died peacefully in his sleep. There was no struggle. And I'm like, thank God my dad's free now. And I'll tell you, that changed my whole life. And I tell people all the time, I said, you may have somebody in your family, whoever it is, that is going through the same stuff that I went through.
Mhm.
And you're wondering, why are you doing this to my dad, to my wife, to my kid? I said, we don't know. We don't know. The only thing I can tell you is at that point when you don't know what else to do, I says, you've been given an opportunity to pour your love that you have into your loved one.
Mhm.
So if it's your father, you pour every ounce of love into your dad's body, into his heart, from your heart. you give him everything you got, because he can no longer do anything for himself. He can't do any good actions where he's going to get the merit of his good actions.
Yeah.
He's only got us. So if we act on his behalf and we pour our love into his heart, my belief is this is what I learned through my spiritual life, is that if I pour my love into my dad's heart, the day he dies, he can take that love with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to help him in the spirit world. But when I empty my heart and I pour my love into his heart, and I feel tired and I feel empty, because how many years am I going to keep doing this for?
Mm-hmm.
The only way that the love will be replenished is that God will see that I'm pouring my love in his heart. God will pour his love into my heart. So as I'm pouring it in, I'm getting it back in here. All I got to do is I got to know my dad's taking this with him. That's it. Yeah. So you know what? Don't make excuses. Don't wonder what's going on. You have been given an opportunity to become a better son, a better wife, a better husband, a better daughter. Doesn't matter. This person is going through that process, not for themselves, not because they did anything wrong. Mm-hmm. There are so many good people in the world and they suffer.
Sure.
It doesn't make any sense. Why do good people suffer? And I realize they don't suffer because they did anything wrong. They suffer to help the ones that need to grow. That's why they suffer. They're paying a price for us to actually see that we need to do something. We need to step up to the plate. So it's not like, oh, you know what? They did something bad. That's why they're suffering. No, maybe you're going to do something bad, and they're saving your ass by giving you the opportunity to, act now in a nice way. And so I looked at it as this. My dad's suffering helped me more than anything that could have happened to me.
Wow.
That changed my life.
I'm not sure most people ever get to the place where you got to, where, you proactively were taking notes to reemphasize to yourself the importance of being kind and taking this opportunity to give love back. I would imagine most people do not have that level of maturity, do not have that way of looking at things, and probably resent that death and that process for the rest of their lives, whereas you almost are taking it as a blessing, an opportunity for you to give back to your dad and to become a better person out of it.
Yeah, that's the only way. And the thing is, it wasn't like I figured it out. Man, I was pissed at God. I'm thinking, if you're really there, man, I'm pissed because I don't get it. I don't get this.
Sure, but you did eventually, which is huge.
That changed my life. But you know what? The crazy thing is, how I got there is something that happened to me years ago. See, years ago, there was a time in my life where everything was falling apart. Everything in my life, everything I touched would bloody die. I lost my money, my businesses, my marriage. Everything was a disaster. And I didn't know, and I didn't tell anybody, didn't want to tell anybody. And I thought, this is killing me, man. It's like it's inside me, and I can't talk to nobody, and I can't get it out. And I'm like, how do I do this? And I remember, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was programmed to say, like, keep it inside. You don't tell nobody. You solve this problem. But I was thinking, it's killing me, man. I can't solve this. I don't know how to solve it. But I just need to be able to tell somebody. But I didn't trust nobody. I couldn't even tell my wife about these problems because I didn't want to be less of a man. I couldn't tell my kids. I didn't want to burden anybody. But I was looking for a way, and I'd watch TV late at night, and I'd see these shows where people would say, oh, you need to pray, like pray and you get all the answers. And I'm thinking, pray, that don't work, man. That doesn't work. It's like banging on a door and you don't hear any answers except a knock. I'm like, that doesn't work. And then I remembered when I was a kid, I watched this movie and I saw this little girl. She was an only child. She's like 6 years old. And she's upstairs in her bedroom. And downstairs, her mom and dad are there. And they're talking to themselves. And next minute, they're here upstairs. She's talking. And they're looking at each other like, who's upstairs? She goes, nobody? And the father goes, okay, let me go check, see what's going on. So he's crawling up the stairs and he looks into the room and he sees his 6-year-old daughter dressed in a beautiful gown. She's sitting at this table on a chair with an empty chair in front of her. And she's got all the teacups and she's pouring tea into the cups. And she's talking to this invisible friend. And she's saying, isn't it a beautiful day? Would you like some tea? I'm going to have some tea. What do you think of my dress? Isn't it beautiful? And I'm watching this girl and I'm thinking, man, she's got an invisible friend. But the thing that I saw was the smile on her face. Her smile was so big. She was so happy. And I'm thinking, I remember this. And right at that moment where I'm sitting there going, I got nobody to talk to. My life sucks. Right there, I heard that voice in my head. Why don't you get an invisible friend? And I'm thinking, what? Okay, you know what? Maybe I will get an invisible friend. And then I started thinking, okay, if I'm going to get an invisible friend, I'm going to have the greatest friend in the world, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a friend that I can talk to. I'm going to have a friend that is always there, that I can say anything I want to say, that will never judge me. That'll be the greatest friend anybody could ask for. Thinking, that's my invisible friend. And then I thought, okay, if I got such a great friend, then maybe I should name him something that is, and I thought, I got to give my invisible friend a great name since he's so great. And then I sat there and I thought, what's the greatest name I could possibly give to my invisible friend? And I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to call my invisible friend God. I just said I'm going to call him God. And then I thought, okay, let's do this properly. And I remembered, you know, in a movie, you have a script, right?
Yeah.
You see the characters on one side and what they say. So I thought, okay, I'm going to create a dialogue and a script with my invisible friend. So I got a journal, an empty journal, and I opened it up and I said, okay, well, you know, if I'm going to talk to my invisible friend, I like to record it. So I wrote my name first and then what I would say. And then I wrote underneath my invisible friend and I'd put God. So I thought, okay, let's start. So I sat there and I wrote, Terry, hi, God. Are you there? And then I'd quickly write God. And I wrote, of course I'm here. I've always been here. And then I thought, this is stupid, man. What am I doing here? If somebody saw this, they'd think I was crazy, like that little girl. So then I went over and I shut the door of my office. Then I came back in and I thought, okay, let's carry on, right? And then I wrote, Terry, hi, God. Are you really there? And God, Terry, I'm always here. And then I grabbed my pen and I smashed it on the table. And I thought, this is stupid. What are you doing, man? I said, this ain't no God. This ain't no invisible friend. This is you with a pen. What the hell are you doing? And right there, something happened to me inside. And I thought, I don't care.
Mhm.
I got nobody to talk to. I need to do this. I don't care. I'm doing it. This is just me and my invisible friend. I don't care because I can't take this anymore. So I grabbed the pen. I started writing. Terry, God, are you there? Terry, I've always been here. God, I got to tell you, I've lost all my money. My businesses have all collapsed. I'm on the verge of a divorce. I don't know how to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so embarrassed and so ashamed. What do I do? And I tell you something. I poured out my heart. I wrote every single thing that was killing me inside on this piece of paper. Day after day after day, week after week after week, I just poured all the pain on this piece of paper over and over again. And all of a sudden, it was like about a month or so, I'm thinking, man, I don't feel the heaviness. Something's changed. And then I started getting to the point where it's like, God, I got a question. How do you think I should be treating my wife? Because we're having some difficulty. And then the answer I wrote was, well, Terry, how do you think you should treat your wife? I'm like, what? well, I think I should treat her like this and like this and like this. Is this right? And then all of a sudden I see, well, do you think it's right? And I'm thinking like, what's going on here? I mean, like, the guy's not even answering any questions. He's like asking me a question with a question. I'm thinking, man, God's a salesman? What's going on here? And I'm thinking, this is incredible.
Mhm.
It was just literally a couple of months, and everything that I heard, everything was gone.
Really?
I'm walking around and I'm thinking, oh my God, I feel so light. What is happening here? I'm walking around and I'm thinking, I got the greatest discovery in the world, man. Nobody knows. I didn't tell nobody. I'm walking around, I'm thinking, I feel so empowered that now I've got a place that I can just vent everything and actually feel that I'm figuring out the answers. Nobody's telling me. This thing's making me figure out the answers. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. And I got to a point where I thought, maybe I don't need the book. I'd walk around, and as I'm walking there, I remember this one specific time I was walking and I'm going, God, are you still there? And then I'd hear, yep, I'm right behind you. I'm like, what?
That's awesome.
And I'm thinking, I didn't even believe in God. I'm a bloody atheist, man. I'm thinking like, but hey, I can do this with my invisible friend. You know, like it blew my mind. I never even knew that this was possible. Changed my whole life. And I never knew how powerful this was going to be until what happened to me next. Holy cow. I'm walking with my mom in a shopping mall.
Mhm.
My dad dies. 9 months later. I'm walking in the shopping mall with my mom, and I see her walking funny. And then I get in front of her, look at her face, and half her face has fallen. And I'm thinking, oh my God, she's having a stroke.
Mhm.
I get her to the hospital. As soon as I get to the hospital, she's lying on the bed, and the doctor comes over to me and he goes, it's not good news. Your mom's got a brain tumor.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
too big, and it's the fastest growing brain tumor. She's gone in 3.5 months. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's been 9 months since my dad died.
Mm.
And now all of a
Wow.
sudden, my mom's lying there. And I'm feeling so helpless. The only thing I could do, I'm sitting there right next to my mom, lying in her bed. She's sleeping at the hospital. I just grabbed a piece of paper and I started writing to my invisible friend.
Mm.
And I wrote in there and I said, look, I don't know if you can save my mom. And I just said, look, if my prayers mean anything, I'm giving them to you. You know, if you're waiting for me to pray and ask if you would heal my mom, I said, I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm asking you, if you can heal her, please heal her. But you know what? At the same time, I want you to do what's right. I want you, if it's time for my mom to go, I trust you. I believe in you. But if you were just waiting for me to tell you how much I love my mom and that you could heal her, I said, I'm asking you. So either way, I'm fine with whatever you decide to do. But you know what? I just want you to know I still believe in you. I still love you and I still love my mom. But I know I know you didn't save Jesus. You know, there's so many good people in the world. You didn't save them. So there's a reason. And I don't know what that reason is, but I'm just telling you, if it's time to take my mom, fine, take her.
Mhm.
And I still have every word I wrote
Wow.
that day on the bed. And then, you know what? 3.5 months later, my mom dies. Exactly the way they said it.
Really?
Day by day by day with this particular cancer. But when she died, I lost my dream, man.
Hmm.
I was going around the world talking everywhere. And I had, you know, like, I was like, Mr. Motivation. Yeah, I had the energy. And everybody thought, you know, I was the strongest person in the family because I was talking about personal growth and development. I'm sitting in my house. I'm sitting on my dad's chair. I'm looking at the sofa that my mom used to put her head on. There's the pillow is still there. I see my mom's slippers are on the ground. And man, I couldn't stop crying. I'm just
Sure.
sitting there going, and then I said the prayer to God. I was angry. I said, God, why'd you take them both? In one year, you took both my mom and my dad. I said, it's not fair.
Mhm.
Why couldn't you just give her a little bit more time? She finally got her freedom from not having to look after my dad, and now you take her. This is not right. And then I kept hearing in my head, Terry, why are you blaming me for taking your mom? I gave you parents for 45 years. There are people who don't even have any parents. You should be grateful that you had them for 45 years. And you know what the problem was? I love my mom more than anybody else in the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost my dream, man. I was sitting there and I couldn't stop crying. And I'm like, yeah, but what do I do? And tears just kept coming at him. And then I hear this voice. You talk to your invisible friend all the time. If you could talk to your mom, what would she say to you? And right there, I thought, okay, you know what? I grabbed a piece of paper and I started writing what I thought my mom would want to tell me right there on the spot. And I just started writing and writing and writing and writing. And at the end of it, I couldn't even believe what I wrote. It's in my book. I put it in my book.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone around the world reading this letter, a letter from my mother. And in the letter, she says to me, she goes, I couldn't even believe it. I'm thinking, I didn't write this. This is not me. In the letter, I read the words and it says, there'll be times where you're sitting there and everything's fine. But then all of a sudden, without even a notice, you start thinking about me. And all of a sudden, this great sadness comes into you and you start crying and you're wondering, 30 seconds ago, I was fine. And now I'm thinking about my mom that died. I don't know why I'm thinking about her. I don't know why I'm crying. And in the letter, it said, it's because I came to visit you. I came to visit you and your spirit felt the presence of my spirit in your house. And that's what all of a sudden you could feel the memories of me and you started crying. Your tears, don't look at your tears as sadness that I left. Look at your tears as proof that I'm right here. We're looking at you. I just wanted to come and see you.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that, I thought to myself, this is incredible. And because I went to speak at this one time, this is right near, after I wrote the letter, I'm in a hotel room putting on my tie, ready to speak. And I'm putting on my tie and stuff. I'm in the hotel and I sit down in front of the TV just to fix my tie. And all of a sudden I think about my mom and tears start coming down my face. And I stopped for a second. And the first words that came out of my mouth were, you're here, aren't you? I know you're here in this room because look, there's the proof that you're standing right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I thought, how can I be sad? My mom just came to visit me and here's the proof, my tears. And I'll tell you, I read this letter, all the details of what's in here about what my mom was doing on the other side, that her and my dad, they're visiting relatives that they hadn't seen for years. And that because they had so much love from all of us, they have this freedom to go wherever they want without any pain. And they were encouraging me. They say, look, don't be sad because we lost our parents too, just like you lost us. It's okay. It's just part of life. It's just growing up. Mm-hmm. But just do what we did with you. Pour your love into your kids, because that's your legacy. That's the legacy you're going to be leaving behind. And know that you don't have to be sad. You just know what's written in this letter, that everything's there for a reason and you're going to be just fine. And I read this letter all over the world and people come to me and say to me, can I get a picture with the letter?
That's incredible.
Because they're like, I'm going home and I'm writing the letter. My mom just passed away and I just want her to tell me the things I want to hear that will help me to move on. And whenever I go on stage, people say to me, I don't get it. How do you speak in front of 10,000, 15,000 people at a time? Don't you ever get nervous? And I tell them, I'm standing on stage. I says, no, I feel nervous out of respect, but I don't feel cocky. I said, but I don't feel nervous. Why? I'm not here by myself. I says, there's 4 of us. There's me, there's my dad, there's my mom, and there's my invisible friend. I says, the 4 of us are right here on stage. What do I got to be afraid of? I'm just telling you the truth.
The full team.
Yeah, it's a full team. And that's it.
That's great. Which book is the letter in?
Oh, the letter is in the book called Get the Power to Change Your Life.
Okay. Very cool.
Everything I wrote, even the day that my mom was lying there and about to die.
Yeah.
It's in there. The journey of my dad, every single thing that happened to him, it's in there. Yeah. Yeah. And I just hope if somebody's listening to this, hey, it's okay, man. We all going to go through it. You're going to go through it. Your kids are going to go through it. You need a formula. You need a formula that when life knocks you down, that you're able to use that formula to get yourself back up. Because if you don't have that formula, sooner or later, you won't be able to get yourself up.
Sure. That's tough. Wow. Was not expecting this conversation to go this way. Terry, that's an incredible story. So much to share. I can't thank you enough.
We didn't even talk about anything we were going to talk about.
No, we didn't.
I don't know what happened here.
We will do many more podcasts, my friend. I think there's a lot to discuss.
Wow.
That's incredible. I will absolutely put your books in the show notes. I will also be asking you for a copy of your book. I'll go buy one because that's incredible. And you're absolutely right. I mean, putting a formula together for people on how to deal with these things, because we only deal with it a handful of times, and there is no way to get experience, but unfortunately, the extremely hard way. And to learn it from somebody like yourself that had such an incredible outlook and found ways of dealing with, I mean, it's just unbelievably valuable.
Yeah, I used to hear when somebody said, how bad does it have to get before you can't get up again? And I'm like, whoa. If you lose your job, okay, fine. If you lose a loved one, and it just carries on. What if it gets worse and worse and worse and worse? Eventually, you're cornered. What's your formula?
Yeah.
It's like you might want to discover it before you get there, or at least know about it in case, so you could at least try to use that tool instead of when you're there, there's no way out because you didn't even know.
It's a great point. Emotionally, things pile up, and not having an avenue. I mean, as you were talking about the story of taking notes, in the back of my mind, I'm like, how many people have told me about the value of journaling and I've laughed about it? Or I'm like, what a waste of time. I don't like, and then in the back of my head, it's like, well, maybe I just haven't suffered enough. Like, quite honestly, like you need things in life to put you into a place where stories like this resonate hard. And you're like, okay, I am now realizing why I met Terry in my journey, so that I've learned there is a tool out there that I can use when I face these scenarios.
And you talk about journaling. Years ago, I had this thought that if you found out you were about to die, what would you tell your kids? Because now you only got, a week left?
Yeah. And
so what I did was I said, okay, you know what? Let me start writing down everything that I think is important in life that I learned. And I did it for months. I wrote down everything I could possibly write. And then I put it in my shelf right behind me, right in there. And the first page says, if you found this book, I have died. I wrote that on the first,
Wow.
I wrote that on the first page. And every week I'd write stuff in there that I thought, okay, this is profound. I want my kids to know about this and this and this. And then one day I had like half the book written. And then I was walking out of this office. And as I was walking out, I heard this voice, a loud voice. It was like a scream almost. You are an idiot. What? Why are you waiting till you die before you share this with your kids?
Yes.
And I'm like, what? And I thought, this is crazy. I grabbed the book. I went upstairs to my oldest son. And I said, I got something that I want you to read. I said, is it a good time? He goes, yeah. I says, I just want you to read just the first page. And he opens the book.
Read the first sentence.
He opens the book and he goes, if you are reading this, I am dead. I said, oh, I forgot about that part. He goes, what's this? Right? I said, just move on to the next. And he starts reading it. And it was talking about all the stuff, all the shit that I went through when I was young. Yeah. And he looked at me like, this happened to you? You lost all this money? You were bullied? You failed all your exams? I didn't know about any of this. And all of a sudden, right there in literally 10 minutes, I could see the respect level that he had for me went straight up, because he found a vulnerability in his dad that he had no idea the shit that I went through. And I thought, oh my God, I'm glad I showed him the book. And that's the stuff that's in my second book.
That's super interesting, because I think about this all the time, having conversations with my son, and we talked about this, where sometimes it's preachy. It's a little bit like, you should be doing this. And when I was a kid, here's how I did it. But I never tell him about the bad things that I did, the screw ups, And those are the things I learned from the most that I'm not sharing with him versus me telling him the answer, which is truly of no value because he's not going to understand it and have the context behind it.
How old is he?
First year university, so he's 18. And I mean, if he knew some of the stupid stuff I've done when I was younger and after, and he probably doesn't share the stupid stuff he does with me because
he won't.
he doesn't know that I've done stupid stuff, and he'll be like, hey, remember that dumb thing you did, Dad? I did something similar, and I need to know that, but I've never.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you don't share, at least in a politically correct way, you know what I'm saying? Right? Then he's not going to be able to tell you nothing.
Yeah.
And he might need to tell you. Then guess what? He's going somewhere else.
Sure. Or he's keeping it in, and then it'll bubble up, and that.
Oh,
just as
man.
bad.
100%. It's like, yeah, that was going to be our talk.
That was going to be our talk. So,
yeah, we'll have to reschedule for that one.
Let's keep it for the next one. Yeah,
Oh, you
absolutely.
bet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for the amount of content and wisdom you've provided. I'm looking forward to get people's reactions on this talk, and we'll share it with the membership. I'm sure they'll be super thankful for having heard it. And yeah, let's get to booking our next one.
Yeah, and it's not about wisdom. It's just I just shared with you stuff that I did.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? That's all it is. Doesn't make me any.
Experiences are so. I mean, with experience come wisdom.
Of course,
you shared the wisdom through the experience, and sadly, those were difficult experiences to go through. So the 300,000 people that you shared this with, I'm sure all appreciate it incredibly as a learning, and I learned a lot today.
Yeah. It was actually pretty funny. I went to speak at one place. I was speaking in English, and they were translating my English into French.
Okay.
Right? And then I had and the French people all had these little earphones in, and the English people were sitting in front of me, and I'd speak, and next to me I'm talking about my dad, and the people in front of me, they're crying. I could see, and all the French people were like, "What's going on here?" Because they couldn't hear nothing. Because the French translator, she was crying. She couldn't talk. It's just like everybody's like confused. Like, why are you guys crying? I can't even hear anything.
That's funny.
Yeah, but
that's why we have AI now. They can translate on the fly.
Yeah, but it was a blast, Laurent. Thank you so much for giving me at least the opportunity to share that maybe one person might be able to change their life or have a tool that will help them.
Oh, much appreciated. Thanks so much, Terry. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
You bet. Take care, buddy.
Take good care.